Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Finance and Administrative Committee of the Town of Hilton Head Island for June 15th, 2021 to order. Zendaya, have we complied with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we have.
Good, thank you. Committee members, please reply with present or here when called upon. Zendaya, please call the roll.
Mr. Harkins?
Here.
Mr. Stanford?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Lennox?
Here. Committee members, do you have any changes to be made to the agenda?
No.
If none, please reply with approved or not to the agenda as being presented. Zendaya, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved and second. Zendaya, please call the roll.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Support.
Mr. Lennox?
Yes, thank you. You have the regular meeting minutes of March 16th, 2021 in your packet. Do you have any changes, committee members, to the minutes as presented? If none, may I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of March 16th?
Move for approval.
Second. Moved and second. Zendaya, please call the roll.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Support.
Mr. Lennox?
Yes. Zendaya, do we have any citizen or public comments?
Mr. Chairman, public comments concerning today's agenda items were to be submitted electronically via the town's open town hall portal. The public comment period closed today at noon. At the conclusion of the open town hall, there were no comments. However, one citizen did sign up to speak before the committee today, and at this time, Mr. Chairman, he is holding.
Thank you. Caller, you have the floor.
Anybody hear me?
Yes.
Afternoon. Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor, no annex. Ames, Lennox, why did you both conspire and commit criminal fraud with town lawyers Terry Finger, tied to Bluffton, Orlando, and Curtis Coltrane, scheming the illegal drafting of the chamber contract to assist Bill Miles and his lawyers David Tigas, Nestor, Paul Bethea to continue to use and be issued millions of tax money illegally with no contract requirement to report all accounting of ATAX funds? Why do you allow Bill Miles to take $1 million to Canada ongoing to use illegally to generate a $400,000 to $600,000 annual salary pay package and lavish spending? Canada Orlando can help. Why do you continue to hand Bill Miles millions when tourism is generated by technology, Facebook, local search, not this chamber who submits fraudulent performance metrics you keep buying into? If this wasn't all true, then why do you allow Bill Miles to tell you both his use of tax money is his secret sauce, it's none of your business, and keep your mouths shut? You both, along with Gruber and Riley, hired lawyer Danny Crow, worse, paid legal fees with taxpayers' money for a lying legal opinion that you did not have to comply to my FOIA or any taxpayer. Lennox, you, Harkins, and McCann all committed criminal fraud, saying you saw the accounting at chamber offices. Banker Lennox, please tell us more about that. Lennox, you also said when somebody asked you why you allowed the last chamber contract 4 years ago to be drafted that removed all transparency for full accounting, you said the chamber lawyers controlled the negotiations and the drafting of the terms and conditions of the contract. Mr. Lennox, who do you serve? The fraud thief Bill Miles and his illegal use of millions of tax funds, or taxpayers who elected your sorry crooked rear end to approve, spend, and guard tax monies like your own? Lennox Ames, along with lying, scheming lawyers Coltrane Finger and our new baton-passing local yokel shyster town manager Orlando, has been caught violating Section 16-13-230, breach of trust with fraudulent intent, to millions of tax funds, and because it exceeds $10,000 or more, it's a felony. And upon conviction, you must be fined in the discretion of the court or in prison for not more than 10 years. I look forward to seeing all of you handcuffed and put behind bars. You could not be any more crooked. You ought to be ashamed. You must be all publicly embarrassed and humiliated to taxpayers and your family. I feel very sorry for you that you've reached this point in your life. Thank you.
Record Committee, the comments we just heard had nothing to do with today's agenda. Agenda item 7, unfinished business. We have no unfinished business to come before this committee today. New business, we have 2 agenda items under new business. Committee no action will be required under each of these agenda items. They both are for informational purposes only. The first is a presentation regarding the Model Business License Ordinance. April Atkins, our Revenue Services Manager, will present. April, welcome.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? I was having trouble with my audio, so I apologize. All right. Thank you again for having me. I'm April Akins, the Revenue Services Manager here at the town, and I oversee the receipting and also collections of our local town taxes, and that does include the business license taxes and their applications. I'm going to share with you a presentation I presented. Hopefully, hold please.
And by the way, you all have copies of what she's going to present.
Okay. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So, give a brief introduction. In September of 2020, the South Carolina General Assembly passed the South Carolina Business License Tax Standardization Act, bringing a resolution to many years of scrutiny to how we administer the business license tax across the state. For many years, businesses raised concerns with legislators about our inconsistencies and the complicated processes found around the state among the local governments that collected business license taxes. So our local legislators got together with our businesses and our cities and towns and our communities to remedy the issues and concerns about how the tax is administered. And this process led to new legislation that standardized our business license tax law. So currently, our business license ordinance is found under Municipal Code Title 10, and it states that every person engaged or intending to engage in any calling, business, occupation, or profession, in whole or in part, within our town limits, is required to pay an annual license fee and obtain a business license. The business license tax is calculated by using the gross income from that business for the prior year or fiscal year. And that gross income definition is also found in our municipal code. So again, it states that the total gross receipts of a business received or accrued for one calendar year collected or to be collected by a business, excepting therefrom gross income taxed in another county or municipality. So basically, if someone is reporting gross income in another county or municipality and paying a tax, they are not required to report that as part of their income here in our town. I did want to point out that the business license tax is a major revenue source for us. It makes up over 20% of the town's annual budget, and that equates about $10 million of the income in our general fund. So again, I stated earlier, the South Carolina General Assembly passed Act 176, and that is the South Carolina Business License Tax Standardization Act, and that did happen last fall. The law requires every local government with a business license tax to administer the tax in the same way across the state starting January 1 of 2022. The law prevents municipalities from receiving a revenue windfall in the first year of implementing any of the changes that are required by the state law. Standardizing business license tax administration statewide will make doing business in our town easier for businesses, especially those who must obtain multiple licenses in different jurisdictions. The standardization will also ensure the tax stability as one of our revenue sources here at the town, and hopefully against possible future efforts to eliminate it. So what does the law require? I wanted to share with you that the town has been working for many years now to voluntarily standardize our business practices with our business license processes, and that has been under the guidance of MASC. So as I work through some of these items that are required by law, you will see that we have met a lot of them and we're already in compliance. So that is always good news. The first and big one that the businesses had a hard time with and complained about was our business license due dates across the state. They were all different dates. So the new law requires that we have to have a due date of April 30th. And again, we moved our due date a couple of years ago. It was May 31st. We've moved it to April 30th, and that began in 2019. So our businesses are used to that. The law also requires that we calculate the tax based on the business's gross income from the previous calendar year or its previous fiscal year. And as I shared with you, our current ordinance already uses that method for calculating taxes. So that's another item that we do not need to change. The law also requires that we use the law's definition of gross income. And I did share that with you as well, so that you can see we are actually going to be using the same definition. It's already in our town ordinance, so we don't have to change that either. Another item that we are required to do is to accept a standardized application, business license application, that's approved by the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. And we have been doing that for many years now. The next item is we have to use the 2017 edition of the North American Industry Classification System, also known as NAICS. We have to do that for our business classifications and assign each business a 6-digit NAICS code. So back in 2018, we embarked on a very large project in the finance department. We were using an older classification system called SIC codes, and we did go through, we've got about 7,000 accounts, so we had to go through them and assign new NAICS codes. And that project was completed in 2018. Those NAICS codes are based on business activity, and that NAICS code drives the rate classes within our ordinance. Let's see, and the last thing here, we need to establish a minimum base rate of the first $2,000 of gross income, and that is how we calculate the business license tax. And again, we did move that to $2,000. It used to be $5,000 back in 2018. So we're doing good. We're heading in the right direction. We've been working to standardize this process. And then the next slide I've got for you are items that we will need to do in order to be in compliance with the new state law. We will have to allow businesses to make renewal payments through an online payment system that's hosted by the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. That is and it's really driven by those businesses that that operate in multiple jurisdictions and need a place to go and pay all of their business licenses at once. So it's intended to be business friendly. And we will work with the Municipal Association of South Carolina to implement the payment portal as required. The last time I spoke with MASC, It sounds like we're going to be rolling that out sometime in the fall. So stay tuned on that. Our current online payment portal is going to remain active, and that will allow us to collect other taxes, our local taxes, including accommodation taxes, beach preservation fees, and also our hospitality taxes. Another item that we need to comply with is we have to use the law's standardized appeals process. And this is in reference to business license assessments. It's not something that we do that often, but it is something that the businesses asked to have standardized across the state. So we will need to update our town ordinance to include that appeals process. The next item that we will need to work on is we have to use the law's standardized business license class schedule. And that will also be updated in our ordinance and adopted as part of the requirement for the law. When we move our current standardized, when we move our current class schedule over to the standardized class schedule, the law did allow us to rebalance our tax rates so that we're not allowed to get a windfall or really a shortfall. They really want us to stay revenue neutral when moving over to the new classes for the 2022 business license cycle. So what does business license rebalancing mean? The law requires the town to update the current license rate classes, and it has to match the schedule to MASC's latest rate class, and that does include the rebalancing of rates that I just mentioned. The purpose of rebalancing the town's business license rate class schedule is to ensure that we, as a town, we do not collect more business license revenue in 2022 than we did in the 2020 business license year. If a municipality projects it will lose revenue as a result of rebalancing, it may adjust its rates to be revenue neutral. After 2022, a municipality may set business license tax rates to meet its fiscal needs. Earlier this year, from around January to March, we did a very detailed data analysis and rate study, which is mandated by law, but it is comparing our 2020 business license revenue that we received to the new MASC 2021 business license class schedule. That data analysis, again, it included about 7,000 accounts, and during that analysis we had to ensure that we were in the proper NAICS codes and also rate classes. And during that data analysis we had to make sure and review how the revenue changes would impact the town. The study did reveal a shortfall of business license revenue of about $340,000. So staff is currently recommending a rate increase for business license taxes across all the classes of 7.2% to achieve that revenue neutral result. The law does require the town to adopt MASC's latest rate class schedule every odd numbered year, so the next rebalancing will occur in 2023. I included this slide. It's a summary of our data analysis and rate study. The snapshot of businesses that you see are the ones that are that were impacted from moving them from our current rate classes to the mandated business license rate classes. So the blue column is where they currently are, the green column is the new rates, and then that is where the variances happened within the groups that created the $340,000 shortfall. So in order to meet all the requirements of this law, there's a lot of complexities, as you saw. We're on the right path. We are going to need to update our business license ordinance. The Municipal Association of South Carolina has created a business license model ordinance to assist the towns with the process of complying with the new law. As you saw, there are very specific requirements found in the new law, and their municipal attorneys have vetted it and made sure that the model ordinance covers all of the requirements found within Act 176. The model ordinance was created by MASC to be used as a base model, and it can be customized to meet our municipality's needs. Because of the new law's complexities, the association is strongly encouraging us to repeal our existing ordinance and replace it with the model ordinance, rather than altering and correcting our current code. Adoption of the business license ordinance that complies with Act 176 must take place by January 1 of 2022. So staff is recommending repealing and replacing the town's current business license ordinance. So within the model ordinance, there are considerations for town council. These are items that are not required by law, but they are found in the model ordinance and should be reviewed. The model ordinance does not allow a business license exemption for a person owning and renting one residential property. Our current town code does allow that. Staff is recommending following the model ordinance and requiring a business license for all property owners that are renting. The model ordinance does not allow penalties to be waived on delinquent business license tax. Our current town code does allow that, and we're recommending keeping that and allowing the town manager or his designee the authority to adjust late fees if justified. The model ordinance includes a declining rate schedule to businesses reporting gross revenue in excess of $1 million. So during our data analysis and a rate study, we did include the declining rate schedule as part of the study and to see what the impact would be on town revenue. Staff is currently recommending not adopting the declining rate schedule. If we do so, an additional 11.3% rate increase across all rates will be required to balance out the additional revenue shortfall of almost $615,000. MASC and the model ordinance do not mandate our business license tax rates. So the town must establish its own rates. And as stated earlier, we are recommending the 7.2% rate increase across all business license class rates to achieve that revenue neutral result. I included this slide so that you could see what our current business license rate schedule looks like. As you can see, there are multiple rates, and it's kind of overwhelming. It is not streamlined at all, whereas the business license rate schedule that is found in the model ordinance is very simple. It's definitely easier to look at and easier to manage administration-wise, and it's easier for the businesses. I did include the 7.2% increase on this slide so that you can see the change in the rates as well. This is another slide I included. It's also found in our model, in the model ordinance. And it's basically a snapshot of the industries and business groups and where they fall within the NAICS code sectors and the classes that they fall in. So it's easy tool for a customer to go out and look at where they may fall and how they might be impacted by a tax. So I included a timeline for the adoption of our business license model ordinance. I started with today's presentation. July 20th, we plan to have a town council workshop presentation with the first reading of the business license model ordinance to follow directly after at the council meeting. August 3rd, we will have a public workshop. And August will kick off our, what I'm calling the public education campaign. We will be working with our communications director, Carolyn Grant, and her team, as well as other staff, to make sure that this information is out in the public and our business owners are aware of the upcoming changes It will include media, island packet, public notices, emails, campaigns, and that sort of thing. August 17th, we plan to have the second reading of the model ordinance and hopefully adoption. September 1, we'd like that to be the effective date for this model ordinance so that we can prepare for the upcoming changes. It takes a lot to get ready for renewal season, and with the upcoming changes, it's going to require all hands on deck with finance staff. Let's see, so October, November, we will work on completing a project to convert over 1,000 short-term rental accounts into business license accounts. And those are people who do not have a current business license, but they're paying our short-term accommodation taxes on their own. In November, we'll start to prepare about 8,000 accounts for the 2022 business license renewal season. And then in November to April, that would be another project that town staff will be working on. And it is to notify about 2,500, and that's approximate, property owners of business license requirements for 2022. So those are people that we have recently, I'd say within the past 2 or 3 years, notified that they did not require a business license because they own one property. So we will have to reach out to them and educate them on the requirements for 2022.
That'll go well.
December, we'll start to process and prepare the license renewals. January 1 is the effective date of Act 176. And then typically by the middle of January, we have mailed out all of the license renewal forms to our businesses. I know I've just thrown a lot of information at you. I just wanted to recap and do a summary of what we've been working on. We have been partnering with MASC to help standardize our process here at the town, and they have been guiding us through the steps in order to do that and comply with our new law. So step 1 was to convert the business license to a standard license year of April 30th, which we did. We need to review all business license tax data for accuracy. And again, that was completed earlier this year. We'll need to rebalance our rates to prevent a windfall or a loss. Step 4, we will have to adopt MASC's 2021 class schedule, and that would be in our model ordinance. Step 5 is to repeal and replace the business license ordinance that we discussed earlier. Step 6 is to set up an online portal account, and again, I think that's going to be slated for late fall. They're still working on some of the implementation on that. And then step 7, of course, is a big one. We'll be communicating the changes about the law to those that are affected by it, our businesses and the public. And I think that education is going to take a while. I think we'll be doing that for at least a year. So the next steps in our process, we intend on sharing with you, with Town Council, information so that you can start preparing for this change. We will send you a draft of the town's business license model ordinance. I'll send you a copy of Act 176, and I'll also include a copy of this presentation. We intend on sending that out to you probably tomorrow, but definitely by the end of this week. And I just wanted to reiterate that we do have a presentation scheduled to Town Council on July 20th with the first reading of the model ordinance to follow directly afterwards at the same, the council meeting the same day. So we want to make sure you're prepared and you have the information, plenty of time to review it, and very comfortable with this entire process. Okay, so that includes my presentation. So I'm open for any questions or comments.
April Akins, that was well done. It's now 2:30. I'm sure there'll be questions and comments, April and committee. I'd like to limit the time devoted to those to no later than 2:45 to allow 10 minutes for a summary of the 11-month interim financial statements. So with that, committee, and let me also recognize the mayor and David Ames as sitting in on this presentation. Glenn.
Thank you. April, excellent presentation. Thank you for summarizing a very complicated matter. Explain to me what you were saying about not having to pay a tax on the same income in two different jurisdictions. Does that mean that a business will certify a certain amount of income is earned in this jurisdiction?
Correct. So as an example, if you have a business that grossed $100,000, then, and they operate, let's say they operate in the town of Bluffton, the income that was generated in Bluffton should be reported there. So if they did $50,000 in Bluffton, then that amount would be reported to Bluffton and paid the tax. Then the other $50,000 would come here to the town and they would pay the tax here.
My concern about that is that different jurisdictions have different tax rates. And it seems to me it creates an opportunity for jurisdictions shopping, if you will, for purposes of minimizing your business tax rate. Is there any aspect of this ordinance that would prevent that?
I don't think so. This is a practice that we've been doing all along, and it's practiced all across South Carolina. So our businesses are very familiar with that, and I don't see that being an issue.
I hope you're right. Then the rebalancing aspect, I see that your data analysis showed that we would lose a little bit. Do you think that was caused by the pandemic? That is comparing 2020 with 2019 or 2017?
I don't. The 2020 revenue is based on the prior year's gross. So that actually is 2019 gross income that the taxes are calculated on. So I don't see that coming from the pandemic.
Thank you. Then finally, I hope you will issue the town council appropriate armor for when the word gets out that the owner of one rental property is going to pay this tax. That's going to be a difficult selling job. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Alex?
I've got a few, and for the sake of time, Mr. Chairman, I don't need a response at the moment, but I appreciate and expect one when we gather again. Following up on Councilman Stanford's comment about the property owners that are not currently paying this tax, I think you mentioned that they're 2,500 approximately. I'm just curious to know if that number is correlated to the short-term rentals that we know may be paying a tax, so we're able to follow them. But I'm more concerned about individuals that are renting their properties out long-term, okay, that are currently not paying anything, all right? So not sure where that $2,500 number is coming from. And I'd also caution us as we go in that direction, because there are many that are renting their property out in the affordable housing fashion, okay? And this will then create an additional cost that essentially will be passed on to the tenant, not be absorbed by the landlord. That's one comment. The second that I've got concerns about, I understand that we're going to an online portal, which I think is great. I'm assuming that the town currently makes collections online also. Also making the assumption that there's a fee associated with that. Let's be cautious that we look for maybe a set fee versus a percentage. I can see some of the larger businesses paying huge amounts being negatively affected if there's a percentage associated with the payment. And the whole communication aspect, I love the fact that that is listed in the next steps. Just be aware that there are a lot of small businesses that may not have accounting departments on top of these type of items. So that communication effort, particularly for the small businesses, has to be tailored as such. Those are my comments.
Would you like me to address some of those concerns now? I know we're limited on time.
I'll leave that to you, Mr. Chair. I'm perfectly happy with doing it the next time. It's up to you.
File that, if you will, April, and make that a discussion point for the upcoming workshop.
Yes,
I
sir.
think you said something that's very important to all of us that have to answer questions regarding this tax, and that is that the tax is paid in advance, not arrears, in advance based upon the most current calendar year or fiscal year gross receipts. April, the data analysis and rate study that you put up showing the $339,000 shortfall as a result of the reclassification to NCAIS classes. I think that's an important schedule for all of us to understand. Can you put that back up?
Oh, sure. Can y'all see that?
I see questions, not
Okay.
the
Yep.
not the
I just went to-
analysis and rate study. That's
There we
it there.
go.
Thank you. Well, it's not like we can see it, but
I know. Hold on. Let me see. I don't know if this will help. Okay.
a little bit. But we all have copies of this in our email. I think if you look at the blue column, those are the business types and classifications that were reclassified. And the blue represents the old and the green represents the new.
Correct.
And the next column, April has it called initial variance. Those are the variances. And if you look at the two largest variances down at the bottom, the variance of $328,622 is in the full service restaurant classification. And up above that, about halfway up, a negative variance of $133,612 is in the healthcare and social assistance. That means those two classifications, as a result of being reclassified, will pay those amounts less. And then the final column on the right is the 7.22 rate adjustment. So look at the bottom of the full service restaurant. They were reclassified. The total business license fee paid will go down $328,622 and up $16,592. Those two industries, the restaurants and healthcare, are the big beneficiaries of this new legislation. Now stay at the bottom of the page. In the blue column, those industries that were reclassified originally generated $1,987,000 in revenue. Under the new classification, they are generating $1,647,000, a shortage of $399,000. They're paying with the 7.2% an additional $119,000. The very last line is all other businesses that were not impacted by the reclassification. They paid before $3,054,000, and they're continuing to pay $3,054 because they're not reclassified. And the 7.2% on that $3,054 is $220. The combination of the $119 and the $220 in the lower right-hand corner is the $339. That makes us revenue neutral for next year.
Yes, sir.
The last thing, April, was to Glenn and Alex's comment about the 2,500 properties that are being rented out and the owners only have one rental property. Before they weren't taxed, now they're going to be taxed. I agree with that. However, do we have any idea what kind of revenue that will generate? And if so, is that considered under the ordinance a windfall that we can't take?
So we have not analyzed what the incoming revenue will be. That is certainly something we'll be doing soon as we start embarking on this. But this does not fall into us getting a windfall. That is not included. So we would be allowed to do this if we choose to.
Thank you. David.
Thanks, Tom. April, appreciate your input, confidence in this. I have 3 items. How much volatility is there in the NAICS codes every other year? Are they reviewing them every other year, and is there volatility?
So the NAICS codes are actually reviewed every 7 years, I believe. It's like, yes, it's every 7 years. And that comes through our census data that happens, for every 10 years. And that's basically to keep up with the demand of what's happening in the business world. The NAICS codes themselves will only be updated, like I said, every 2 years. From there, MASC looks at what's happening in our industry, and they may make adjustments to the rate class schedules. I can tell you from previous experience, the rate classes before, there were a lot. I think they were about 3 pages long, and they have simplified it and made it a page long. So I think through this process of standardizing our business license tax law and also working with the community and the businesses, MASC found that a piece of it that's very difficult to administer across the state. So they have simplified it. I'm really hoping that that keeps it very stable, particularly coming out of a pandemic. So I understand.
I appreciate that. 2 questions that I asked just to get an idea of impacts. How many businesses on our island have gross revenues over $1 million?
Not to get into financial information, there were quite a few. We can certainly talk about that maybe offline, but it impacted, as you saw, it impacted our revenue stream quite a bit.
And then lastly, in your description, business licenses required by every person engaged, every person. Do you have any idea the level of compliance by individual contractors and individual contractors of all descriptions on the island? And is that something we ought to be looking at?
When you say contractors, are you talking about construction or
No,
just like a 1099 consultant?
1099 consultant, anybody who is engaged in.
Right.
So.
I feel like we have a good, we're in a good place with them. It's taken a long time to communicate out to the business world that if you are a 1099, you're a self-employed individual and you should have a business license. And that is something that we work on. It's a continuous process. So we do focus on that. It's a big part of educating someone that walks in the door or even someone that calls wanting to know if they need a license. So that is something that is in our forefront.
Okay, I just bring it up because it may be a source of income, and to the degree we have more people participating, then the percentage for all, in effect, goes down. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, April. Appreciate your answers.
Good job, April, and we are right at 2:45. Thank you very much. Look forward to the workshop upcoming.
Thank you.
Good job.
You know, this could have been worse. For 2 years, the Senate was fighting over making it on net revenue.
Yes.
Oh,
On net revenue, we were out of
I
business.
remember very well. You did a good job of forestalling that. The second new business agenda item is a financial presentation through 11 months of the 2021 fiscal year by John Troyer. John, I'm going to take some chair's prerogative here and ask that you go right to slide 11. Unmute yourself, John.
John, you may have to unshare and then start sharing again. We're getting the blue screen. And you're muted. Maybe you're...
And you're frozen.
No, we still can't hear you. we...
Yeah. Where do you go? What do you do? John, I think the things that MASC had to give in that standardized bill were well worth what we got.
Oh, yeah.
It was a win.
I believe John has gone out and is going to try to come back in. I believe he was having some audio issues. He should pop back up momentarily. And just as a reminder, Mr. Lennox, and I know you know, it's 2:47.
You really wonder what the compliance percentage is. There's a lot of room for, reporting gross income variances.
We have code officers checking, but there's never 100% compliance, especially the subs. Subcontractors.
Yeah.
Is-
I like your term, Glenn. Rate shopping or?
Yeah, right, yeah. That's something that lawyers do. If you can go to different jurisdictions, you go to where there's a friendly judge.
Yeah.
And so that looks to me like an opportunity out of this law.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we have this.
Got it, John. Slide 11, I think, is the one, as I recall. That's it. Enlarge that, please.
Can we hear?
Bigger.
You're still
A
signing.
little bit bigger if you can.
John, if you start your slideshow, that'll get a lot bigger. You're not in slideshow mode.
Sound.
There you go.
Your computer on, do you have mute on your computer? Not a mute on the Blue Jeans, but are you on mute on your
Yeah,
desktop?
I've made that mistake before.
That's how I know of it.
Well, that tells the whole story right there.
Experience talks.
David, and that tees up your
Yeah,
comment.
while we're waiting,
Go ahead.
we have a fairly significant increase in the real estate transfer fee this year. And it raises the question in my mind, the correlation
John, I have it on slide 11.
That's it. The larger if you can, Cindy.
Let's see. That's
Good, thank you. Okay, John,
okay.
5-minute version.
Okay. As you can see, you look at our, just as a representative, this is not all our revenues, but it is a representative sample. And 11 months into the year, we're favorable in every category, from the TIF funding to local aid tax to state aid tax. As Councilman Ames had mentioned, the real estate transfer fee is our shining star. And so we can celebrate that we've had positive results. One caveat about this schedule is last year when COVID started, town council changed the due date of business licenses and others. And so some of our last year collections didn't happen until June. And so we wouldn't necessarily get a full apples to apples with this view, but it certainly is a positive view. And we would expect our positive results to continue, but the differences won't be as great. So I'll go there. I would like to emphasize property taxes, 3.4%, and that's a good year, and certainly we are surprised and happy about that. But our largest revenue out of all of them is a 3.4%, and so it isn't as high a percentage as what we might have. I think the other thing that we might want to emphasize here, and I know you've got another meeting, is that like for instance on the real estate transfer fee, it's limited by the town code, and so there's only certain uses that are allowed on real estate transfer fee, and it's delineated in the code, and so it doesn't all have the same flexibility property taxes would have. 11 months in, I just would report, Mr. Chair, that we've got a positive result, and we're looking forward to one more month to go.
Thank you, John. The transfer fee has a sunset.
It does.
When?
From my memory, the end of 2024.
Okay.
2024.
But it can be extended, okay?
Yes, sir. We touched on that a little bit in the budget. It absolutely can be extended through local ordinance.
Are we working with the real estate group related to that?
They want to talk about different conditions, Bill, that the money can be used for and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have
So
that?
tie into David's comment too. Your comment would tie into David's comment. If the real estate people want to see what the money being used for, is it being used to help continue to appreciate or not?
That it's a state law that we have to comply with, isn't it?
It is. So the state law really just tees it up and sets the condition, but our local ordinance is very specific on how we can use it. And I believe that looking at it, and I spoke with Josh as well as others on this, and John, I think that we could reset the uses or the allowed uses of funds.
Or say what we're doing.
One of the actionable items of post-budget, if I could, were for John and I and others in-house to get back together on this real estate transfer fee and really scrub it and bring it to you through this committee to set the future direction of it. And that's one of our highest priorities as we reset the budget for July 1.
We have a positive.
Mr. Lennox?
Yes.
My apologies to interrupt. Just wanted to let you know that your next meeting will be starting soon.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I have one more question, Mr. Joy, if I could. I'll be quick, and if you don't have the answer, then you can get back to us. But you're showing, I guess, about 13 million increase as far as
Year-over-year.
revenue, and about 2 million increase in spending at the moment. So are we suspecting that we'll have an overflow here?
But not as much as you might think. So, yes, we're expecting a surplus, and I think there'll be some moderation that happens in June. So
Haven't
June,
had this discussion offline. May I have a motion to adjourn? Second.
okay.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. We stand adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.